This is the Grumpy Kilt, and you are listening to the Grumpy Kilt Speaks. Episode 33. Greetings from a local amusement park in 1983. A wanderer through the occasional magic door, I move from world to world, and when not running role-playing games for some people and causing trouble for other people, I make podcast columns and reviews of role-playing game material. My companions include legendary Demolicher Suriak and Grandmother Hag Baba Yaga, and we waltz across time and space in Baba Yaga's magic dancing hut. This is a typical life for a podcaster. By comparison, all three of the people at the Tome Show actually work for Venger. Normally this is a podcast review series, so the style can be rather loose. I mean, while recording, I rarely wear shoes.
Shoes? Hell, you rarely wear pants.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a Suriak, legendary Demilich, production assistant, and royal pain in my ass. Where was I? Right. This week starts a special set of reviews, which will examine one of the first aspects of gamer mass media. This is the first installment of a 5-part series focusing on
I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon series. The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon is an American animated television series based on the game of the same name. The show was popular and ran for 3 seasons on CBS on Saturday mornings in the early 1980s, the same period that saw the original airing of such notable programs as G.I. Joe, The Muppet Babies, and The Smurfs. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson developed the Dungeons and Dragons game in the early 1970s, freely adapting existing war games for a Lord of the Rings type of an environment, with magic, dragons, mimes, and other purely fictional constructs. By the late 1970s and the early 1980s, the game had gained in both popularity and notoriety, so much so that a Saturday morning cartoon loosely based upon the game was possible. Dennis Marks, notable for working on the Batman-Superman Hour, Josie and the Pussycats, and the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon, developed the original concept for this cartoon series based on concepts similar to those of the role-playing game. The first version went under the title of Swords and Sorcery. This version Marks pitched to NBC, which rejected the concept and the program. CBS picked up the concept, then it brought in Mark Evianer, who revised and simplified the show concept. CBS produced the program in combination with Marvel. The D&D cartoon is among the first cartoon programs produced by Marvel. CBS kicked Dennis Marks off the project. The story of TSR, founded by Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, and at the time of the cartoon the license holder for D&D the game, is its own melodrama, but that story will have to wait for another day. Relevant here is that by the time of the airing of the cartoon show, Arneson had left the company. As Gygax worked on the program, in a role now titled Creative Consultant, the management environment at TSR shifted, and Gygax became involved in a legal struggle for the company, which he eventually lost. As such, the creators of the game had little involvement in the execution of the show that carried the game's name. Despite that, the program adequately adheres to the game as it existed in the early 1980s.
What do you mean?
I mean, it could have been better, but it could easily have been much, much worse, considering it came more from Hollywood insiders than gamers.
Well, what do they do? I mean, does it have I don't know, a giant from Brooklyn screaming about his wheelie?
Actually, that does happen.
What? Really?
Yeah.
I do not know how to respond to that.
I suggest abusing alcohol, but we will worry about that when we get to the episodes. The general premise of the show is that a magical ride on an amusement park pulls a group of children into the, quote, realm of Dungeons and Dragons, unquote, where they find themselves in conflict with villains and guided by a character called the Dungeon Master.
You know, that sucking kids into another world got to be a real problem. That is why you do not find any Dungeons and Dragons rides in amusement parks anymore.
What? No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Then why aren't there any D&D rides anymore?
Moving on. Upon arrival in the realm, the children are out of place, but the Dungeon Master, a character named for the referee in the role-playing game, assumes the role of their mentor, appearing and giving them each a class and a magical item to suit that class. In most episodes, the children try to return home, but take detours and help people, or they find that their fates are intertwined with the fates of others, and they have to sacrifice an opportunity to return home for the sake of the so-called greater good. As such, the cartoon falls into the same scenario as Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland. Child strangers in a strange land trying to go home. The program ran for 3 seasons, including 27 episodes. The stories of those episodes range wildly, even within those parameters, and the quality of the episodes runs the gamut from good to piss poor. The relative level of violence was controversial for an American children's television program at the time. Though of the 6 protagonists, only 3 actually had weapons, and they rarely used them directly against enemies. The script of one episode, The Dragon's Graveyard, was almost shelved because of the characters contemplated killing their nemesis, Venger. This episode is now regarded as one of the best of the series. Criticism of the Dungeons and Dragons at the time rolled along at a low boil, and this backlash had many results, including the stories on 2020 and the movie Mazes and Monsters.
Oh, which totally got Tom Hanks his first Emmy.
No, it didn't.
What? He didn't get it? Oh man, he was totally robbed.
Moving on. While the original complaints about role-playing games and the series seem quaint now, it is important to remember that in 1985, the National Coalition on Television Violence demanded that a warning be run during the broadcast of each D&D cartoon episode, stating that Dungeons and Dragons had been linked to real-life violent deaths. Controversy did not impair the show's success, which spawned more than 100 different licenses, and the show led its time slot for 2 years. Its eventual cancellation came about because of declining ratings, largely from airing opposite the wildly successful Smurfs.
Oh, those little blue bastards. I'm the president of the Gargamel fan club, you know.
Yes, I know, you've got posters of him in your room and you leave flyers for the club scattered around the dancing hut. In any event, between the declining ratings and the existing episodes that could be repeated endlessly, the plug was pulled, ending the program. While the D&D cartoon never achieved the levels of popularity achieved by its cartoon contemporaries, it does serve as a kind of relic for cartoons of the period and as an interesting commentary on what Hollywoodland saw as acceptable entertainment for children during Ronald Reagan's first term. Last but not least, it is almost 30 years old, but it still enjoys some popularity. So it is worth examining. And it will be examined. Forthcoming episodes will examine the program in terms of the protagonists, antagonists, the episode, and the subtext.
That's it! That's it! The doorway home! Go for it! Quickly! You haven't much time!
This is the Grumpy Celt, wishing you long days and pleasant nights. The Grumpy Celt Speaks is a proud member of the RPG Crosstalk Network, which includes such podcast programs as Knights of the Night, Self-Critical Hits, and the Genosodes. To find out more about these or other podcasts that are part of the network, please visit rpgcrosstalk.webs.com or rpgcrosstalkpodcast.blogspot.com. The Grumpy Celt Speaks is produced under a Creative Commons license. You are free to share and distribute the episodes, but do not alter the episodes or sell them. This series is produced for the purposes of providing satirical RPG commentary and reviews, and does not hold the copyright to the books or characters or campaign settings discussed herein.